Hi, I'm Gayla Scrivener, ex-corporate girl and now work-from-anywhere adventure seeker. Creating a work-from-anywhere lifestyle isn't without its challenges, but those challenges certainly don't overshadow all the many benefits. What breaks my heart is seeing folks stuck and unhappy in a career and lifestyle when they want more out of life. I believe that we all have the opportunity to create the life of our dreams and earn a living in fun and creative ways to make our dream lifestyle a reality. You too can experience wonderful adventure and freedom as you live life on your own terms. In this weekly podcast, I share experiences when it comes to growing a lifestyle business through guest interviews, content marketing experience and perspectives, virtual leadership lessons, and I'll even throw in some travel adventures. My hope is through all the interviews, the tips, advice, and personal experience, you'll be inspired and motivated to keep going and creating your dream lifestyle. Life's an adventure. There's no time but the present to live life to the fullest. Hi there, and welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here today. Over the past few weeks, you may have noticed that I'm doing a little series about podcasting. A couple of weeks ago, for my 150th episode, I talked about my experience in getting to episode 150. Then last week, I brought my husband Robert to the show to share some tips about equipment. I've been doing more and more talking about podcasting lately, as podcast production is one of the services that we do offer at Scrivener Solutions. There are different levels of podcast production packages that we do offer, and it just depends on what stage of launch our clients happen to be in and what level of service they are seeking. Now, for those of you who have already have a podcast going, or actually even if you're thinking about starting one, I have a free podcast episode checklist for you to download. This is the exact checklist that my team and I use so that we don't miss a step in our process. I've included the checklist for a solo show and another one for an interview episode. You can download the checklist by going to scrivenersolutions.com/podcast checklist. Now, the link is in the show notes. And there are a few things that must be done for each and every episode, and that's just the process. But what about startup of a podcast? Today, I'm going to share the steps that we do to get a podcast going. The setup is usually a one-and-done thing with several details, but knowing those details is important. Over time, you may want to tweak the settings. After all, with time, you get better and you discover more things that you want to incorporate into your process. And, since you don't do the setup all the time, being reminded if you already have a podcast going, being reminded of certain things, you might go back and change your settings. If you've never started it before, I'm hoping that this episode is helpful for you. Before we get started, you've heard me say this before. In starting and growing your lifestyle business, you must be creating at least one core piece of content. And that one core piece of content needs to either be a blog post, a video, or audio, and it must be published consistently. The consistent publishing schedule is important. It's not only important for your audience so that they can get to know, like, and trust you, but it's super important for you too. By adhering to a publishing schedule, you will acquire the discipline skills that will serve you well in other areas of running your business. Now, there are many types of content marketing: blogging, social media, email, video, newsletters. And to me, in my mind, I think of content production as a system with many gears. You may start out with maybe one or two gears that need to turn and work together. Maybe one gear of social media and blogging. And you need to see how working those two gears works before adding something else. Now, over time, you add another gear, and then when one system is working well with the others, one gear is working well with the others, you add another one. Any type of content you produce can be thought of as a gear in your entire marketing system. You choose which gears to install and how they work together. Now, podcasting is a fantastic content production option to make a genuine connection with your ideal client. What better way for people to get to know who you are, what you stand for, and how you help them by hearing your voice right in their earbuds? It's close. It's personal. Now, here are 5 reasons you should start your own podcast. Number 1, people are listening. In the U.S. alone, 50% of all households are podcast fans, and 16 million people consider themselves avid podcast fans. Of those listeners, 93% will listen to most, if not all, of each episode. And that's a lot of people you can reach with your voice. Number 2, make a more personal connection. The written word is no substitute for the spoken word. With a podcast, you can connect on a whole new level. People hear you and get to know you and connect with your personality through the inflection of your voice. Although we recommend producing a blog post in conjunction with your podcast episode, it's not necessary, especially at first. Adding the blogging gear to your content plan can happen later. Repurposing your message in another form helps your SEO, and you can have additional audience reach. But first, just think of the podcast. Number 3, you position yourself as an expert in your niche. Podcasting is the perfect opportunity to share what you know. The more you share and the longer your show runs, your audience will see that you know what you're talking about. You build trust, and you are here to stay. Being consistent with podcasting helps build your communication skills to drill down on how you truly help your audience. The better communicator you are, the better you'll be at reaching your perfect client. Number 4, build your network. Guest interviews are a fantastic way to build your network. You not only are introducing your audience to some fantastic professionals that will open up their world, but you're also expanding your reach as well. Your guests are great contacts, and possibly you'll do business with them or they'll send you referrals. And here's the cool thing. Typically, guests like to share that they've been on someone's show. By them sharing their episode, you could pick up new listeners. It's fantastic. Number 5, potential to make money. While most coaches and consultants' decision to podcast helps them build their brand that ultimately gains them new clients, there is a potential of monetizing your channel. Popular shows often offer advertising and sponsorship options. They have grown their channel to where their number of downloads makes it super attractive for other companies to buy chunks of time to be mentioned on their show. So there you have it. There's 5 good reasons to start a podcast. Now, I publish blogs and videos too, but where I start is my podcast. The topic of my podcast will then filter its way through all the other content I'm producing in any given time period. And let me step back and say, I did not start and do everything all at once. Concentrated on one content foundation and really was growing that, and then added blogs and then added videos. So now that you know why you should start your own podcast, let's talk about what you need to know to set up your podcast to launch. And this is to get you started for the most part. You don't need to worry about all these settings again after the initial setup. The first and foremost thing, before you even do anything, the first and foremost thing you need to do is really evaluate the why you want to produce a podcast. Now, I told you some good reasons, 5 good reasons to start, but starting anything, you really need to evaluate your why, because your why will help you get through the hurdles and challenges that come your way and the drudgery of routine. Although I've listed a bit ago, some great reasons for anyone to be producing a podcast, it's not for everyone. And you must come up with a more personal reason. Something deep in your gut that it's like, yes, I am going to be doing this because of this. Now, my reasons may differ than your reasons. But like I said, your why will get you through the hurdles and drudgery. And believe me, there's going to be some. So be sure to be clear on that. and even write it down and refer to it often. Now, let's dive into a few setup details to accomplish launching your show. First, decide on your show format. Is it going to be a solo show, interview style, or a combination? What will the frequency be? Is it going to be once a week, once a day, once a month, every other week? What is your frequency? Kind of make a schedule for yourself. Put some thought into this so that you can record a couple of episodes and have them in the can, so to speak, before your launch date. Start recording some episodes before you get started, basically. Second thing, decide on a show name. Now, I wish I had put more thought into the show name before I really started. But even though you may put a lot of thought into it, and still, there may come a time that you're not happy with the name of your show, and you may want to change it. It happens, so don't let it stop you from getting started for fear of finding a more perfect show name. I started out with the Accomplish More podcast, and then I changed it to the Gayla Scrivener Show. Now, the bummer is that the slug of the show remains Accomplish More, and I cannot change it unless I want to start the whole thing over and lose my subscribers. So I'm okay with the slug being Accomplish More. That was my original name. I changed the show title anyway, leaving the slug the way it was, and my new name is still searchable. So give your title some thought, but don't let it over-evaluation stop you from getting started. Now, the third thing is create the show artwork. The show will need artwork. You see that little square of an image when you're searching iTunes and choosing what podcast to subscribe to? That's the show art. And it's a square image, and there are certain dimensions, and you can just Google it real quick on the dimensions of what that show art needs to be. And when creating the show image, really keep it simple, keep it clean. Don't have too many words on the image with fancy fonts. Make it clear, because you need to remember that it needs to be readable on this little tiny square on people's phones. Less words, less clutter, the better. To design the image, you don't need fancy design software. Canva does just fine. The next thing you need to think about and do is record a small intro. Write out who you are, who the show is for, what to expect, and the frequency. Write that out. That is your intro script. And then record it. Now, this will serve as your episode 0. Now, you must have a published episode uploaded in order to link the RSS feed to iTunes. It's common practice to start and launch a show to have a quick little 30-second intro of what the show is, who you are, and just introducing it so that it's out there so that you can get the other setup accomplished. Next, create a Libsyn account. That is libsyn.com. Now, Libsyn is a podcasting hosting site. Although there are other services out there, Libsyn is the one I use and I'm the most familiar with. Once the recordings are uploaded to Libsyn or any other podcasting hosting site, then it's Libsyn's job to syndicate it to all the other channels you want, like iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You see, you can't direct upload podcast episodes to places like iTunes. They don't accept it. They have to come through a syndication service like Libsyn. iTunes receives the info from these other sources, from these companies like Libsyn. And it's a cool way that it works, because if you just upload once to Libsyn, then the episodes are published all to these other channels all at once. So it makes the process a lot easier. The syndication piece is really cool. Now, once you've signed up for Libsyn, you choose a plan level. With plans starting at $5 a month, it is so affordable. The plan rates are determined by how much space or total file size you'll be uploading in a month's time. You have a fixed amount of space that renews each month. Usually, if you're just starting out and will have about a 30-minute to an hour show once a month, definitely a $5 per month plan will do just fine. Now, if you're going to have 2 shows a month, you may get away with the $5 a month plan, but that depends on your show's length. Now, I publish weekly, and I subscribe to the $15 per month plan, and I have plenty of space. Now, if I try to cram in a 5th show in a month, sometimes I run out of space. And the plans are so easy to move up and down the line if you should need more space for a month or 2. So don't worry about that. You can get more space one month and then reduce it down another month. So then when you've got your Libsyn account access, then it's time to set up your show within Libsyn. You'll be adding your show name. You'll upload your artwork. You'll upload your episode 0. You'll upload the description, which can be basically a written out version of your episode 0, your introduction episode script, so to speak. In Libsyn, you'll be setting up the connection with iTunes, with Stitcher, with Google Podcasts, with anything else. They even have a link that you can send it to YouTube if you prefer. I also like to format the Libsyn website page for the show because I use it in certain areas through my content plan. Now, to set up the connections with each of the major players like iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and others, they each will have their little quirks. You can always Google how to set up the connection. And then once all of that setup work in Libsyn is there to syndicate your show, the next thing to worry about is recording, editing, assembling, and publishing your podcast on a consistent basis. Making the decision to produce a podcast is a big one. Don't go into it thinking it's not going to take any sort of time investment. It's going to take investment in time and a little bit of money. Throwing it out there, it's not just a quick and easy thing. You may experience obstacles and frustration and want to stop before you see results in your efforts. It's normal. It happens. That's the very reason your why must be well established. When you go back to your why in producing your podcast, and if it's a strong enough reason why, then your why will help you get through the times when you want to give up. I'm just being honest. Sometimes it'll be hard, but is it worth it? Well, that's a personal decision, isn't it? I believe it's truly worth it and has helped me both personally and professionally. I'm going to keep doing it for, the unforeseen future. Got a question for you. Have you ever taken a course or 2 on how to launch your own podcast? Have you followed through with your launch, or have you put it off for one reason or another? Now, I've known many coaches and consultants that have paid quite a bit for courses on learning how to do something like launching their own podcast, only to not get through the course and not execute plans to launch. And it's okay. It happens to the best of us. I've been guilty of purchasing a course or 2, get excited about doing the thing that I took the course for, only to be overwhelmed by the implementation. That's why Scrivener Solutions' business model is to help our clients implement their plans. You'll never know if a plan will be successful unless you implement it, adjust it, evaluate it, and develop it. To get things moving, you must implement and keep the consistency going. I once heard that plans are only achieved to the degree in which they are implemented. I happen to agree. Implementation is key. Action is key. If you are really wanting to start your own podcast, but the implementation has been on shaky ground, there's some great resources to get you headed down the path of a successful podcast. Now, at Scrivener Solutions, we do offer plans at 3 tiers. The first is for the DIYer who wants to do the production themselves but need that extra personalized help and accountability. The mid-level tier is for someone who needs help with the button pushing, if you want to call it that way. You do all the content like the show notes, the special promos, and you need a team to format and get it to where it needs to be. Then the top tier is for the person who just wants to record the episode and would rather have someone else do all the writing of the show notes, the social shares, the blog post, plus all the button pushing activity. So that's what we have in our implementation phase. There's so many opportunities out there, and I would love to hear from you. Drop me a note at podcast@gaylascrivener.com if you truly are interested in launching your podcast and struggling with the implementation. I'd love to hear your story and your vision. Maybe I can point you in the right direction and help you get over the hump of implementation. Now remember, go over and grab a copy of the podcast episode checklist by going to scrivenersolutions.com/podcast checklist. That may help you get started in the routine of things. Well, thanks for listening. I do hope you found this episode helpful, and be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast player. And it would be most helpful if you'd leave a kind review as well. Well, thanks again. And until next time, have a fantastic week.